Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another Suhoor Bite. I have two very special guests for my last two Suhoor Bites this Ramadan. You might recognize some of them. The one today is nobody else than Fawzi Mesmar.
Hello, marhaba. Rami, how
Hello,
nice of you
good
to
to
have me
have
on one
you.
of your Suhoor bites. I didn't have you on
It
mine.
is.
No, that was kind of embarrassing.
I thought it would be fun to introduce visible Arabs and visible Muslims, and it would be kind of strange to not have the two of you on because there's a lot more to talk about than the stuff that we normally talk about on the podcast, right?
True that,
Uh,
true that.
and one of the things, like obviously for you, one of the things that's interesting to me is that you're a very visible Arab game designer, but you're also the person who literally wrote the book on game design in Arabic, right? There's not a lot of people that can say that they literally wrote the book, but it's you,
Yeah, it's been, 3 years ago now
right?
when I launched the book. الخلاب في فن تصميم الألعاب.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it honestly answered the question of how you say game designer in Arabic as well, because I'd never quite thought about that either.
Do you know, that was one of the hardest things about writing that book, is that there's a bunch of terms that I were like, oh, game dynamics. Wait, what's that in Arabic?
Right.
And then I'd have to either look it up, or if there's like an article or something about it, or like I would go to an Arabic game review website like Saudi Gamer or something like this to see if they use specific terms regularly to describe aspects of games.
Right.
But if I can't find anything, I'll be like, right, I guess I'm gonna have to coin one and
Right.
just
You're going to make this word.
make something up and go like, well, that's it in Arabic for now, and then we'll see, we'll see if it needs to be updated or something.
Right. Yeah, because that's one of the things I always find fascinating about, my dad always thought that I just played video games for a job, right? Never really thought of game design as a real job. And I tried to explain to him all different aspects of my career. So I'm a programmer by trade, right? So I tried to teach him programming, and actually it was really hard. He never got it. Even the very basic stuff, until Ramzi Nasser in New York made a programming language called Qalb,
Yeah,
which is in Arabic.
yeah.
And I
That's
showed
cool.
it to my dad, and he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense." I was like, "Oh, come on, that was the only problem was the language barrier, right?"
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that's also true for game design. Like a lot of Arabs, they start at a disadvantage because they have to learn this different language to then learn in that different language a jargon about abstract thinking.
Yeah.
And you've taken away that entire part and just created a shortcut to understanding all of this stuff.
It was like one of the biggest motivations when I started to write that book is that, when I started out in the Middle East 18 years ago. And it was just
Right.
me and a group of friends who started to make a game together. But that was before Unity, before proper game engines that you can use were available for independent developers. Being independent developers without funding or having a studio or a publisher was not a thing at all. This is before Xbox Live Arcade was a thing either.
Right.
So we just made a lot of mistakes and we were learning from them. And I was, I thought everybody was calling me, you're our game designer and you're doing the game design for us. But I had no idea if I'm doing the right thing or not. And I was
Right.
trying to get my hand over any book I can to just give me that gratification of telling me what I'm doing is right,
Right.
So I was trying to get as many books as I could to kind of get to know if I'm what game design is. So everything I learned either by making a lot of mistakes or by reading in books. And I happen to be fortunate. My mom's an English teacher. I've learned English at such a young age, so I could, consume that material in English. So I wanted to, first of all, give back to the community. After I left the Middle East and worked in so many different companies and got a lot of experience, I was like, it's time for me to give back experience for people that don't know or can't speak another language to get access to this information that is not available in Arabic at all.
Right.
I just spent 3 years writing that thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a thin book. You went all out. You literally wrote all of game design. Well, not all of game design, but you wrote a really good primer on most parts of game design.
It's
right?
like I wanted to write like a game design 101. If like somebody doesn't know anything about game design, they can
Right.
pick up the book and get an idea about what's going on. It's a textbook, so it's like 400 pages ish of material, but it's like, it's still the basics of what
Right.
is the history of video games, what is game design, what is game mechanics, what does game balance mean. And I
Right.
deliberately wanted to have a chapter at the end to just talk about how to get a job in the games industry,
Right.
from wherever you're coming from, especially like, given my journey as like how I made it into the games industry, from a country that didn't really have a game industry, or like it was in its very beginning.
Right.
I wanted to add something there for people to be able to get something to use.
Right. It's funny. One thing that I'm recognizing from your story that makes me very happy is that I also mostly read the books to confirm that what I was doing was the right thing. It's not it's not that I wanted to learn, it's just that I was doing things and I wasn't sure if they were correct.
Yeah, man. Like
And
I
reading
was
somebody who wrote a book about it and be like, oh yeah, that's the same. Okay, so that's what that's called. Okay, cool.
totally like one of my biggest motivations of wanting to leave the Middle East initially was that I was already making games. And like, there were
Right.
people already playing my games that I've made in the Middle East. But I wanted to go and like, work with real game developers to see
Right.
how games should be made. And then when I did it, I was like, oh, they're actually doing the same thing.
Right.
They're doing exactly the same thing. And they also don't know what they're doing, just same as me. And
Right.
we're making a whole bunch of mistakes and we're learning from them. We're like, oh, okay, cool.
Right. It's nice. I'm glad to see, because I mean, specialized knowledge is really hard to get in general for a lot of technology sectors, I think, in the Middle East, and especially for this level of abstract design work in games specifically. The fact that you were the first one it's at the same time kind of horrifying, but also good that there is a first one now. I'm hoping that there's an explosion of books about
I
the
really hope
topic.
so. Really hope so.
Right.
Like
It would be really nice.
I wouldn't call myself to be like the best or the most qualified to write on the topic, but like I was, we're just gonna get something out there, and hopefully someone
Right.
better will come along and do a much better job than I did. But at least for the time being, there's something there for people to get started.
Yeah. It's also so different from translations, right? Because translations usually come from a place. If you translate like Eric Zimmerman's book or Tracy Fullerton's books or Raf Koster's books, like they come with such an expectation of existing knowledge frequently, like
Yeah.
things that are so normal to say in English.
Yeah.
That it doesn't quite work either. So like from the ground up written for the subject is really, really cool.
Yeah, those guys are good friends, and I like highly respect their work. And I reference that a lot in my own. But
Absolutely.
you're right; I had to be sure that even when I reference Ralph's work or Jesse Shell's work, that
Right.
there's the primer of what that means, and like the introduction into that particular part in their book and how they describe the particular section.
Well, I'm glad you did all that work. I mean, I know how much work it is to write anything, but 400 pages is intense. And then 400 pages where you're translating a jargon into a language that doesn't have that jargon. It sounds like a lot of work.
Thanks, man. I'm glad it was over. I was so happy when it was done.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thank you so much for doing that, Fawzi.
Thanks a bunch, Rami.
Good. I think we're going to wrap up. If people want to find you, Fawzi, anywhere, they can find you in the places where we normally promote on the podcast. But like, if they want to find the book, maybe, how about where can they find the book?
So it's on Amazon, so you can search for Al Khallabin, The Art of Game Design on Amazon, or search for my name on Amazon, or you can actually go to my website, fawzi.zone. You can find all of my shenanigans there, my career, the games I worked on, the mentoring that I do, and all of that stuff. But there's also a book section, so it's fawzi.zone/book. You can find links to where you can get the book across Amazon and other services that are only available for the Middle East, by the way. So you can find a bunch of links over there.
Shukran, ya Fawzi.
Have fun.